Welcome to a video on how to prepare an effective research presentation, either live or recorded. I'm Ella August, faculty at the University of Michigan School of Public Health and editor-in-chief at PREPSS, an organization that supports researchers across the world with their scientific communication training needs. In this video, I'll start by touching on the importance of knowing your audience. And then I'll go through some basic presentation components of a research talk. I'll review some slide design principles, and I'll give some tips for maximizing audience comprehension and honoring questions. Okay, let's get started. I start basically every training with advice to become familiar with your audience. You should have a sense of how much background and experience they have on the topic of your talk. I suggest you gather information about your audience. Your audience's background and experience should shape the type and amount of background you give, the amount of technical detail that you provide, and the language that you use and do not use, and applications of your research findings. Now, it can be challenging to speak to a diverse audience with a wide range of experience levels and knowledge. And it's true that if you do have a diverse audience, not everyone in your audience will be able to follow all the details of the methods and the results. However, everyone should be able to understand the first part of your talk when you set up your question, you talk about the importance of your research question, as well as the end of your talk with the 3 to 4 main points you summarize at the end. The components of a research talk are pretty standard. Of course, there are the flagship components that we all use for our research talks and journal articles and abstracts, the introduction, methods, results, and discussions. But I suggest you add a few components beyond these standards. A hook, an informal introduction to help your audience get focused on what you're about to say. A 3-point summary of your main takeaways. Acknowledgements, as well as transitions to help your audience follow your talk. Start with a hook to help your audience get settled and focus on your talk. A hook is informal. It can be a short story, a hypothetical scenario. It can be a question that you ask of your audience. Let's look at an example. A research presenting about the health hazards of electronic waste could start their presentation with this hook. Have you ever wondered what happens to your old electronics? This presentation addresses the health burden of electronic waste, also known as e-waste. That's it. This example asks an interesting question and defines e-waste for those who might not be familiar with the term. An overview slide is a good idea because it helps your audience process and remember information. Memory experts recommend providing a high-level overview of your talk at the beginning so your audience can organize and store the information as you go. And the information is going to stick better with that structure in place. Your overview slide should be specific. So instead of presenting, the sort of generic components of every research talk, make it a bit more tailored to your talk so your audience knows what to expect. So for example, instead of introduction, you can say you'll discuss something like the nutrition needs of infants in urban Ecuador. The more specific you are, the better. Transitions also help your audience. Transitions can help improve the flow of your talk. They help your audience follow the structure that you provided in the overview. You can use transition slides, that's what I'm doing in this talk, or you can simply use verbal transitions and just let people know when you're transitioning from one topic to the next. Be sure to include a summary slide at the end with your 3 or 4 most important takeaways. A summary helps your audience sort of gel the information that you've presented, especially if your talk is highly technical. This summary should not be detailed. Use plain language so people who maybe didn't get all the details can come away with a basic understanding of the main points of your talk. Finally, be sure you say thank you at the end of your talk. Acknowledge your funders and thank anyone who helped you along the way. And people really notice this. It's a nice way to recognize those who have supported you, but it also shows that you're a good colleague and collaborator. Now I'm going to cover a few key design principles for slides. Include visuals on every slide possible. It's more work, but for the audience, it's also more engaging. So take a look at this example of a slide. That's a lot of words. When it's converted to a visual presentation, the slide is much more interesting. In fact, research shows that visuals help people remember information better. That said, sometimes you just need words on a slide to clearly convey a point, and that's okay too. Finding free copyright appropriate photographs and icons and other visuals can be challenging. So here's a few places you can look for free copyright appropriate visuals. I would say when you're on these websites, look carefully because some of them offer both free and paid content. Animations introduce slowly and help your audience focus on the point you're making. So this example slide that we saw earlier has a lot of information and your audience needs cues to help them focus their attention. You could start, if you were rolling this slide out, you could start by introducing the title, then talk about the first point, then talk about the second point, and then the final point, helping you and your audience focus. If you're recording a video, I will say animations are really crucial. Continuous action on the screen really helps your viewers stay engaged. Another way to help your audience focus is to include only one message per slide. I always say slides are free. Use as many as you need to avoid overloading each slide with too much information. Simple slides reduce cognitive burden. Rather than using generic slide titles like results, create descriptive titles. The slide title should tell your audience the main point of the slide. In this case, I renamed the slide Illness Increases with Sand by Beach Young Age, which really summarizes the main point of that slide. Questions are an important part of every talk. If your talk is synchronous, let your audience know at the beginning whether they could stop you with questions or whether they should save questions until the end. Also, before your talk, I suggest that you try to think of 3 questions that you think you might get during your talk, and then sort of plan and prepare beforehand how you're going to respond. When someone does ask a question, I suggest that you start by repeating it to make sure, first of all, that you understood the question, but also to make sure that everyone else in the audience also hears the question. And one final note about questions, it's totally fine if you don't know the answer to a question. You can just say, gosh, that's a great question. Let me think about it a little bit, and can I get back to you offline afterward to follow up? In sum, tailor your talk to your audience, use strategies to maximize comprehension, use an overview slide and design principles to help people process and remember the information, and honor questions by trying to anticipate them, letting your audience know when to ask questions, and by repeating them before you answer. For more free author resources, including instructions on how to add closed captions to your video and tips on where to look for free copyright appropriate visuals, check out the author resources page of the PREPSS website. Thank you to the University of Michigan, Center for International Reproductive Health Training, and the Center for the Assessment of Tobacco Regulations for supporting the development of this video. Thank you for watching.